आपको सिर्फ वही दिखाई देगा जो मिस्टर शी जिनपिंग चाहेंगे, बाकी सारी चीजें सेंसर्ड है। मॉरल ऑफ द स्टोरी, किसी भी सरकार के पास ऐसी पावर नहीं होनी चाहिए जहां वो 14 लाख सोशल मीडिया पोस्ट डिलीट कर दे, सोशल मीडिया अकाउंट्स को बैन कर दे, जर्नलिस्ट को जेल में बंद कर दे। ये वीडियो बनाने के बाद मैं चाइना तो घूमने नहीं जा सकता ना। आइए आपको मिलाता हूँ रियल लाइफ थैनोस से। ये चुटकी बजाकर डेटा उड़ा देते हैं, अपने पीसी का नहीं पूरे इंटरनेट का। इन्होंने नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ हेल्थ सीक्वेंस से कोरोना वायरस का सारा डेटा उड़ा दिया। यही नहीं, सालों से इनकी इकोनॉमी ने मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में रूल किया अपने डेमोग्राफिक डिविडेंड की वजह से। बट स्लोली इनकी जनता बूढ़ी हो रही है। ये अपनी जनता को प्रोत्साहित कर रहे हैं कि शादी करो, बच्चे करो, बट जनता एकदम उल्टा कर रही है और पॉपुलेशन बढ़ने की बजाय घट रही है। अब इंडस्ट्री और इन्वेस्टर्स को अगर ये पता चल गया कि आने वाली वर्कफोर्स की एवरेज एज धीरे धीरे बढ़ती जा रही है तो उनका कॉन्फिडेंस तो गिर जाएगा। इसीलिए इन्होंने अपने पॉपुलेशन का डेटा इंटरनेट से डिलीट कर दिया। और बात करें यंग पॉपुलेशन की, उसमें से भी 21% लोग बेरोजगार हैं। अब ये आंकड़ा जनता को पता चल जाए तो मैटर हो जाएगा, संभालना पड़ेगा, इतना झंझट कौन लेगा। डेटा ही डिलीट कर देते हैं। ये रियल लाइफ थैनोस और कोई नहीं बल्कि चाइना के प्रेसिडेंट मिस्टर शी जिनपिंग है।
中心。最も重要なのは体の中心、足腰である。強靭な足腰で体を安定させることは正確な攻撃と崩れぬ防御へとつながる。まず滝に打たれる修行をしてもらい、丸太3本を担ぐ修行。
太い。
最後にこの岩を一丁先まで押して運ぶ修行。私の修行はこの3つのみの簡単なもの。下から火で炙るのは危険なためなしとする。
すみません、善逸が気絶しました。
川につけなさい。
冬の川、いくらなんでも冷たすぎるんですけど、死ぬわ、8度。善逸、陸、うわ、なんか内臓がやばい。目上げてる、死ぬって言ってる。いやー、ダメだ、上がっても手遅れ、どうしてする。
久しぶりだな、お前ら。岩にくっつけ、あったかいぞ。
あったけえ。岩ってこんなにあったけえんだ。おふくろの腕の中に抱かれているようだ。あー、母ちゃん、母ちゃん。冷たい。これはきついな。滝修行、過酷だ。
ちょっとつ申し、ちょっとつ申し、ちょっとつ申し、ちょっとつ申し、ちょっとつ申し、ちょっとつ申し、ちょっとつ申し。
伊之助も頑張ってるんだ。俺も。念仏が聞こえなくなった。あれ、伊之助、あ、やばい、やばい。伊之助、あきら、伊之助、あきら、伊之助、あきら。
呼んだか、万次郎。
伊之助。
ちょっとつ申し。
この滝は一味違うぞ。
念仏だけはずっと唱え続けろよ。集中するためでもあるけど、意識があることを伝える合図でもあるからな。
はい。
南無阿弥陀仏。
水が冷たい。それに重い。ダメだ、黙っちゃ。念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏、念仏。冷たい。滝に打たれるだけなのに本当にきついですね。高い位置から落ちてくる水があんなに重いなんて、 体の力抜いたら首が折れそうだし。
いやいや、お前もあのイノシシもすげえよ。初日滝修行できるようになるの夕方だったぜ。なかなか水に慣れなくて、とりあえず一刻滝に打たれ続けられるようになったから、俺はこれから丸太の訓練だ。
すごいですね、村田さん。
10日いるからな。
あいつすげえよ。玉ジャリジャリ親父。
岩柱の姫島さんな。変なあだ名をつけちゃダメだよ。
初めて会った時からビビッときたぜ。
骨も食べるのか、伊之助。
おい、お前食べねえのか。歯ごたえあってうめえぞ。
すごい。俺の知ってる人の中で一番魚をきれいに食べるのは伊之助だな。
俺は何でも一番山の王だからな。当然だ。
大丈夫かお前、もう10匹目だぞ。
で、玉ジャリジャリ親父のことだけどよ。
岩柱の姫島さんな。
間違いねえ、あいつ鬼殺隊最強だ。
おお、やっぱりそうか。
そうなの？
姫島さんだけ匂いが全然違うんだよな。あざがもう出てたりするのかな。
出ててもおかしくね
やっぱちょっと短期間で階級上がる奴らの話はついていけんわ。普通そんなんわからんだろ。内容が異次元すぎる。あと炭治郎の焼いた魚うま。
俺は信じないぜ。あのおっさんはきっと自分もあんな岩一丁も動かせねえよ。若手をいびって楽しんでんだよ。
いやいや、姫島さんはあれよりもまだ大きい岩を押してるそうだから。
お前はなんで言われたことをすぐ信じるの？騙されてんだよ。
いやいや、善逸も耳がいいんだから、嘘ついてるかついてないかくらいわかるだろ。
南無阿弥陀仏、南無阿弥陀仏。
あ、ちょうど通ってるな。うわー、すごいな姫島さん。俺もあんな風になれるかな。なれてたまるか。バカかお前は。こんにちは。頭大丈夫ですか。
あのおっさんが一番なの。おっさんそもそもクマみたいにでっかいやって。でも黙れ。巨人と小人じゃ生まれついての隔たりがあんなよ。わかるだろ。
腹も膨れたし、丸太稼いで岩をしてくるわ。
もう前向きなやつばっか。俺の居場所ないわ。
まあまあ、
よっしゃ。
まあまあ。次はいよいよ。
また一人見つけました。これで6割ほどの鬼狩りどもの居所を把握。しかしまだ太陽を克服した娘は見つかりません。
泣き目、お前は私が思った以上に成長した。素晴らしい。泣き目、お前は私が思った以上に成長した。素晴らしい。
光栄でございます。
あとはそうだな、この辺り。
承知しました。
また見つけた。そのまま尾行を続けろ。
承知しました。
禰豆子も産屋敷ももうすぐ見つかる。
足の方が下がってしまう。押し負けてる。いてて。直しに戻るか。おはようございます。
あ、かまど。俺たちは山を降りるわ。とてもついていけね
お悪いな。ここで脱落するのは心苦しいが。
でもお前たちの後方支援に回らせてもらうよ。頼んだぞ、かまど。
はい、俺からも頼みます。
頼む？
皆さんが後方支援してくれたら俺たちも安心して鬼と戦えます。鬼殺隊全員の力で鬼物寺無惨の首を取りましょう。
わかった。後ろは任せておけ。
了解だ、かまど。頼まれた。
俺は俺のやるべきことを。
おお、炭治郎握るの上手だな。
ほんとだ、めっちゃ三角。
かなり体を酷使したから塩分は多めにしてあります。お待たせしました皆さん、どうぞ。
いやー、うめえよ。
体にしみるわ。
うまい。
俺今回の訓練で気づいたわ。今の柱たちがほとんど継ぐ子いない理由。
何ですか？
俺もなんとなく分かったわ。
しんどすぎてみんな逃げちゃうんだろう。
ああ、
それとかあの金髪みたいにさ、柱との違いに打ちのめされて心折れたりさ。
こういうのを当然のようにこなしてきてんだから、柱ってやっぱすげえわ。
そうですね。
っていうかお前めっちゃ米炊くのうまくない？
うめえ。
なあ、魚焼くのもうまいしよ。
俺炭焼き小屋の息子なんで。なるほど。料理は火加減。焼きおにぎりも美味しいんです。
やるな炭治郎。
どんどん食べてくださいね。
うめえ。この味噌付き最高だよ。
なんか泣けてきた。
わかる、おふくろの味だな。
おっかおふくろ。
なんだかちょっと懐かしいな。今日もダメだった。もう6日目だ。どうする？鬼だっていつまでおとなしくしてるかわからないぞ。早くしないと。単純に筋力が足りないのかな。それともまた別に呼吸法がある。これだけ訓練してるのにまだあざを出し続けられない。
お前額のあざ濃くなってないか？
あ、ゲンヤ、大丈夫だったのか？あの後連絡取れなくなったから心配してた。
謹慎してたんだよ。姫島さんに叱られてさ。兄貴と接触するなって言われてたのに、あんなことになって。
そうか。
悪かったな、巻き込んで。かばってくれてありがとうよ。
いや、そんな。
それはそうだ、お前あざ。
あざ濃くなってる？
ああ、
誰にも言われなかったけどな。
そりゃ毎日顔見てりゃ変化がわからんだろう。鏡持ってねえのか？
うん、
後で貸してやるよ。
本当に濃くなってる。よかった、嬉しいぞ。
死ね。お前がな。
岩の訓練してんだな。俺もやってるよ。
いやでも全然動かなくて。玄也は動かせた？
動かせるよ。お前ら反復動作をやってんの？
え？
やってねえのか。姫島さんも教えるのうまくねえからな。よく見て盗まねえとダメだぞ。集中を極限まで高めるためにあらかじめ決めておいた動作をするんだ。俺の場合は念仏唱える。
姫島さんもやってる。
そうそう、ナムナム言ってるだろ。
ナム。
あばよ。二度と来んな。
じゃあな。
ありがとう玄也、試してみるよ。
無理するなよ。ってそんなこと言っても聞くようなやつじゃないか。
もう一回だ。反復動作。玄也が言ったことを思い出して。
全ての感覚を一気に開くんだ。姫島さんが言うには、俺は呼吸を使えないけど反復動作を使えば岩も動かすことができるってよ。と言っても俺もまだまだなんだけどな。
姫島さんと玄也はこれを使うとき、怒りや痛みの記憶を思い出す。それにより心拍と体温を上昇させている。くそ、まだまだか。
炭治郎、早くご飯にしてくれよ。お前が作ってくれたの食べたらもう他のやつのは食べられないよ。
もうそんな時間か。すぐ行きます
よっ、おふくろ、おふくろ。
おかえり玄也。
俺も手伝うよ。
ありがとう。
どうだ、反復動作はできたか？
全集中とはまた違うみたいだ。
感情を高ぶらせる感じだな。ただ思うんだけど、お前の額のあざってそれと同じ状態になってるってことなんじゃないか？
だけど姫島さんや玄也、お前にだってあざはないぞ。
確かにそうだな。炭治郎、お前にとって感情が強く高ぶる時ってどんな時なんだ？
それは
なんかわかんないけど悲しいことを思い出させちゃったか。悪いな。お前ならきっとできるよ。
ありがとう。反復動作をすることにより、いつでも一瞬で集中を極限まで高められる。俺の反復動作はまず大切な人の顔を思い浮かべること、それから煉獄さんの言葉を思い出すこと。心を燃やせ。あざが濃く出た状態がこれでずっと続けられるようになるといいな。
コンパチロ。
あいつこんな夜も明けてない時間から稽古始めてんのか。一日持たねえぞ。
俺も負けてらんねえ。
初めのうちはできなかったけど、反復動作から全力を出す。それを何度も 何度も何度も繰り返しているうち体が覚え始める。反復動作から全力、この工程を。マジ？
炭治郎いったー！くそー、負けたぜ化け物。
あの男は何を企んでいる？さて、どうしたものかな。お前はどんな姿をしている？産屋敷。
今回は姫島さんの紹介です。どうしたんですか姫島さん。
むつまじい。
ここで大正こそこそ噂話。姫島さんはめちゃくちゃ涙もろいです。ゴミが散らかっているのを見ただけでも泣いてしまうそうです。
な、猫かわいい。なん、猫かわいい。
また泣いてる。次回第7話、岩柱姫島行明。
हो जाएगा इस पे मेरे नाइट पे। अब मैं नाइट हिला नहीं सकता विदाउट अ चेक, पर ये चेक दूंगा तो इधर आएगा। मेरी क्वीन पे भी अटैक है। नॉट वर्किंग, नॉट वर्किंग, नॉट वर्किंग एट ऑल। ओके दैट्स फाइन। बिशप d7, रुक c8, वी विल फाइट, वी शैल फाइट दिस वन। सर भाई लेटेंट में बंदी ने कितना जीता आई डोंट रिमेंबर एक्चुअली। देख 150 टिकट्स होती हैं, 500 रुपये की एक टिकट होती है। रिकॉर्डिंग का कॉस्ट वो देख ले, उसके अलावा सब उसका। आई थिंक 30-40 हज़ार रुपये, ज़्यादा थोड़ा कम 35-40। इट्स मोर देन मनी, इट्स अबाउट द एक्सपीरियंस। दे हैव सो मच फन। बहुत मज़ा आता है भाई, लोग आते हैं, फन होता है, इट्स अ वाइब लेटेंट। वो घुसाए जा रहा है भाई रानी बार बार। रुक d7 कैसे करूंगा मैं भाई? मैं 1545 को नहीं हरा पा रहा हूँ मैं यार। एक पॉइंट मिला क्या मेरे को वापस बाय द वे? अच्छा तो मैं पॉइंट डाउन था ही नहीं तब से, मैं क्यों इतना स्ट्रेस में था फिर?
टीटे दल्ले आराम से खेलना, बता रहा हूँ चिकन मिस नहीं होना चाहिए। ऐसा इसे भी नहीं दे रहा है।
अरे रुक जा।
हाँ क्या लेफ्ट से गाड़ी वो करो में जाओ, उसको छोड़ो। बाइक की मारो लेफ्ट राइट वाला।
मैं नीचे मत आना। इधर तेरी गाड़ी में फ्यूल था क्या?
मेरी गाड़ी में था ना भाई थोड़ा।
ये उड़ के आ रहा है, उड़ के मेरे पे देखो। अबे एक गोली का है। मार दे दिखे तो। एक बंदा मेरे पे
नाइस।
वो एक गोली वाले को मारना है, लेफ्ट गया वो।
First, let's look at what would happen if you have a relatively high ping without lag compensation. As the enemy ran past, I fired directly into them, but the shot didn't register. This is because of networking delays. First, ping, which is the time it takes for packets of information to travel from a player's computer to the server and back. The enemy walks into my crosshair, and the server receives that information half of his ping later. The server then sends that information to my client, which takes half of my ping. Next, interpolation, which causes me to see the enemy after an additional tick. After I finally see the enemy under my crosshair, I fire. This information takes another half of my ping to reach the server, at which point the server registers the shot. These delays add up to the differences between when I see the enemy, where the server sees the enemy, and where the enemy sees himself. Now we'll see what happens with lag compensation on. The shot is fired, and after a delay it registers as a hit. Then after another delay, there's blood spatter. What's happening is the server receives the packet that a shot was fired and then looks at the latency on that packet and factors that in along with interpolation to infer on which tick my client fired a shot. The server then goes back to that time and checks where all of the players were. It sees that a player was where I was aiming when I fired and registers a hit on that player at that position. After another half of my ping, my computer receives the packet from the server informing my client that the enemy target was hit, and that's when blood spatter comes out. First, let's look at what would happen if What's happening is the server receives the packet that a shot was fired and then looks at the latency on that packet and factors that in along with interpolation to infer on which tick. First, let's look at what would happen if you have a relatively high ping without lag compensation. As the enemy ran past, I fired directly into them, but the shot didn't register. This is because of networking delays. First, ping, which is the time it takes for packets of information to travel from a player's computer to the server and back. The enemy walks into my crosshair, and the server receives that information half of his ping later. The server then sends that information to my client, which takes half of my ping. Next, interpolation, which causes me to see the enemy after an additional tick. After I finally see the enemy under my crosshair, I fire. This information takes another half of my ping to reach the server, at which point the server registers the shot. These delays add up to the differences between when I see the enemy, where the server sees the enemy, and where the enemy sees himself. Now we'll see what happens with lag compensation on. The shot is fired, and after a delay it registers as a hit. Then after another delay there's blood spatter. What's happening is the server receives the packet that a shot was fired and then looks at the latency on that packet and factors that in along with interpolation to infer on which tick my client fired a shot. The server then goes back to that time and checks where all of the players were. It sees that a player was where I was aiming when I fired and registers a hit on that player at that position. After another half of my ping, my computer receives the packet from the server informing my client that the enemy target was hit, and that's when blood spatter comes out. The delay on the server registering the shot is why you can get hit after you've already gone around a corner on your screen. The enemy player's client doesn't see you go around the corner until after ping and interp. It might be frustrating when it happens to you, but just keep in mind that that's lag compensation working as it should, and that the enemy only saw you for as long as you peeked on your own screen. The whole peek just occurred after a delay on his screen. Finally, it's worth noting that lag compensation doesn't determine who shot first. It only determines if you aimed correctly. The first shot to reach the server is the one that registers first, so the player with the lower ping has an advantage in this regard. When you see a player run smoothly across your screen, what you're really seeing is an interpolated estimation of their position between ticks. To explain, let's first imagine there's absolutely no ping between the player you see, the server, and yourself, so the only delay between perspectives is entirely interpolation. I've exaggerated the delay you'll see in-game by 20 times to make this point easier to illustrate. As the player runs, your client is updated on his position once a tick. On a matchmaking server, that'd be 64 times a second, or about 16 ms. The client doesn't render the player in the latest known position, however. Instead, it holds off for one tick, so that it can smoothly animate the player between the last two known positions. This is called interpolation. Without interp, the positions of players as rendered by your game would jump from one tick to the next. And since the refresh rate of your graphics card, monitor, and server tick aren't all synchronized, the motion could become unsmooth. If you found this video helpful, please consider a like and subscribe.
In gaming, victory is measured in milliseconds. NVIDIA Reflex provides a competitive edge, combining both GPU and game optimizations to dynamically reduce system latency. Game developers can now implement a low-latency mode that aligns game engine work to complete just in time for rendering. This eliminates the GPU render queue and reduces CPU back pressure in GPU-bound scenarios. Some of the biggest Unreal Engine titles in the world, such as Fortnite and Valorant, are taking advantage of Reflex. It's ideal for any scenario where you need lower latency. Check out these titles and developers who are already using Reflex today. To use Reflex in the Unreal Engine, go to Plugins and search for Reflex or NVIDIA. Either search will find it. Enable the plugin and restart your project. Now that you've restarted the engine and the plugin is enabled, you can activate Reflex with blueprint scripts. As a simple example, load up your level blueprint scripting window and create a begin play node. Then, drag off a connection and do a search for Reflex in the blueprint menu. This will find all of your Reflex functions. There are 2 set functions and a number of get functions. The get functions can be used to test whether you're on a Reflex-capable GPU, and by doing that simple test, you can set Reflex to be active. So we've created a set Reflex mode function, and we set it to the standard enabled. I'm also going to create a set flash indicator enabled and check the enabled button so that I can easily measure latency with Reflex Analyzer to make sure Reflex is working. For safety's sake, it's important to test if the end user is on a Reflex-capable GPU. You can do this quite simply by putting in some branch logic. Add a branch node at the start of begin play, before your set functions. Drag off the condition link and search for Reflex, and select the Get Reflex Available function. This will test if the end user has the right GPU and if their drivers and other details are up to date. If it passes, then it's true, and we can set the Reflex mode on. Compile and save, and now we can run the level in-game and see Reflex working. You'll notice that Reflex has a couple of options in its usage, and can be set to either Reflex mode on or Reflex plus boost. Boost mode will attempt to reduce latency as much as possible, but can use a little more GPU power. We recommend that when you implement Reflex, you set the default as the standard on, to give your users a great baseline experience, much as the same way Valorant has implemented Reflex for their game. Flash Indicator is good for measuring end-to-end latency with an LDAT or Reflex Analyzer device, while the software stats in the Reflex SDK can quickly help you determine if Reflex is working. Remember to be GPU bound. Thank you for your interest in the NVIDIA Reflex plugin for Unreal Engine. As you can see, it's easy to implement and set up. Reflex offers impressive benefits for any NVIDIA gamer who wants to lower latency. And in a multiplayer game, we all want that competitive edge. As a developer, you can get started with the Reflex plugin today.
FPS was totally fine, and then about 10-20 seconds into it, and boom, suddenly we got a 15 FPS drop all of a sudden for no reason. What's going on? And every time an FPS drop like that happens, my heart sinks because, quite frankly, I don't know the best ways to often troubleshoot certain things, but I'm going to show you what I do know. So with any FPS drop, the first thing we want to do is we want to turn on detailed stats. So you can find that in the top left corner, and then under engine, select detailed. And what this is going to allow us to see is everything from frame down to GPU and even memory. It's going to show us, okay, what's the bottleneck that's really holding up performance? All right, so here we are again, and we see the spike in performance down there in the bottom left corner. And in the top right, we can see that red, that's our game thread. So in my mind, that's actually good news, because I was worried it's all GPU, that the fire is something our GPU is not going to be able to handle. But the game thread, that really means blueprints, or it means something that's running on the CPU. Not necessarily blueprints, but because everything I'm doing is blueprints, it's probably blueprints. So now that we know it's the game thread, what I'm going to do is under Stat Advanced, I can enable, if we scroll down, there's a lot of stats here, game. And what this is going to allow us to see is one level deeper, like what within that game thread is actually taking up the most time. Right now, those bars are very small because nothing's going on, but let's start things up again. So within my level loading, there's always this initial spike, and it's going to settle down because, yeah, it's basically physics, the rocks getting settled, foliage spawning, all that fun stuff. Everything's normalizing, and then we can see what's up. And there's that giant spike again. So it's all in the blueprint time you see there. So something in blueprints is causing a serious problem. So what's our next step? Doing some searches, I stumbled upon this really useful blog post by Unreal Engine, and I know it was written all the way back in 2014, but it holds up really well. So I'll post a link to it in the description below, and you can check out the entire article. But what it recommends that we do next is use the tilde key to open up the command console and entering stat start file. And that's what actually starts recording data for the profile. And it says let it run for at least 10 seconds or so to get a nice average over many frames, and then we can stat stop file to actually end it. All right, so we wait for the giant spike again, and here we go. So tilde, And we're going to do stat start file. One word, if I could spell. There we go. And in the top left corner, now we've got our stats file. And it says duration 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 8 seconds. You only need a few seconds of this, and then you should be good, especially if you've got a stable issue. Now, if you have periodic spikes in your frame rate, you probably want to record for a longer period of time so you could see what's going on with those spikes. I have some little spikes, but predominantly it's just overall frame rate spikes through the roof. And then stat stop file. All right, we can exit out. So we got our profile snapshot, but how do we look at that? So for that, we got to go to Tools, and then we can go to Session Front End here. And then we need to navigate over to the Profiler tab. And we need to load in the last file that we just recorded. So we go to Load, and you're probably going to have to navigate to this folder, but it's under your Unreal projects. You go into your main folder, Saved, and then into this folder called Profiling. Under Unreal Stats, there you'll find the file. So it's in here. And it'll probably just take a few seconds to load depending on how long the recording was. So now we get into the more interesting stuff. So you can either here select a single frame, or you can click and drag and select multiple frames. Then you can look at an average over that period of time. If you select just a single frame, then it'll be just one frame. If you select an overall period of time, you could actually look at the maximum, which is helpful to look at those spikes. But in our case, I just want to look at the average because I want to see what's going on, generally speaking. And then we start coming down here to the events. And the first thing I'm looking at is the background thread pool. So that's not going to tell us anything because it's just waiting for something else to happen. So what we really want to do is we want to take what we identified in the first couple of steps, which is that it's the game thread, and we want to expand that part of the profile. So game thread, and I know my head is blocking here, so let me just readjust this slightly. So now with the game thread, we can see that that's taking up 35 milliseconds per tick, which is quite a lot. And most of that is frame time. So we're going to expand frame time, and then we can expand here frame time. In the world tick time, that's what's taking the most, so we'll expand that one. Tick time, pre-physics here, expand that. Release tick group. So basically you keep digging deeper here and looking at the most expensive, basically the highest millisecond tasks. And then finally we get to tick function tasks. And wow, so ground foliage, hierarchical instance static mesh that I've set up, that's taking 18 milliseconds. And under blueprints, it's actually a function within the blueprints. And not only that, I can see the specific function on the blueprint. It's this on fire check function that's killing me. And so at this point, you would go into that blueprint and start troubleshooting. And it took me a little while to figure it out, but it really was pretty obvious in retrospect. So if I go into my foliage HISM here, so this on fire check function that I created, basically it's taking every single instance of the static meshes and it's checking every single instance, every single tick, whether or not it's on fire. Obviously, that's not a good way to handle it because there could be thousands of those instances. And really, we only care about those that are on fire. So what I ended up doing is I ended up creating a brand new array where I store the ones that are on fire. It's a much smaller number. So the end result is perfectly fine performance, even with a ton of foliage on fire. So I hope this was helpful, and hope to see you guys in the next